The Blockchain Show is a podcast that demystifies cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technology.
Greetings, my blockchain brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 122. Today on the show, we have Nick White from Harmony. Basically, the show is, we've been around, it'll be 3 years in May. The goal was to demystify blockchain, distributed ledger technology, cryptocurrencies. We used to have a saying, we wanted to promote the widespread adoption of cryptocurrencies. Obviously, a lot's changed since 2016.
Totally, as always. That's like, 3 years in crypto time is, 20 years in a normal industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen, it used to be kind of a mystical thing that no one really knew about. You had to kind of seek it out. And now...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, now it seems like it's dominated by business and hype. And
totally.
We're just kind of trying to cut through that and just kind of get the word out about how this technology can really, change our lives if we let it. I think that we're kind of letting other
forces.
Big force. That's a good way to put it. Other forces kind of govern our technological lives, really. And so that's why I was really excited to talk to you guys. I should introduce you. Thank you for joining us, Nick, the co-founder of Harmony, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, I'm talking to you just outside of Los Angeles, so kind of in the realm of the tech world, more of like the entertainment world. But there's a little bit. There's a place called Silicon Beach here.
Oh yeah,
a little bit of blockchain activity going on, but not as much.
I heard Snap is down there. I've heard that a lot of people are starting to migrate out of the proper Silicon Valley and start their own kinds of places, other parts of the world, and even in the U.S. Like there's Silicon Prairie now in the Midwest, and there's kind of this diaspora from Silicon Valley.
Yeah. Well, it's changed a lot there too, I would imagine. And well, it's just hard. I guess it's just hard to live there. Like the price of living is all over the place. Where are you guys based?
So we're based in Cupertino. We're right in the belly of the beast. Apple headquarters is just a few minutes down the road, that gigantic circular spaceship that Apple built. And, when you talk about, it's becoming so expensive to live here, I actually, there's sort of like this visual impression I have of the big tech companies, Apple, Google, Facebook, and the like, sucking in data and value and money from every corner of the world. And it's all kind of flowing here. And from here, from these centers, it then kind of flows outward and then, inflates the salaries of people, inflate, and then that kind of then feeds into even the housing prices and even the prices of food and all kinds of services. So it is kind of alarming how expensive life is in Silicon Valley, but I think it's kind of a cause to the way that technology is sort of centralizing wealth and power.
Yeah, I've heard people say that area, the Bay Area, is going to be like Brazil. Was it Sao Paulo? How they have really tall walls for the people with money to live, and then right outside of that is just slums. And I thought, I hope that doesn't happen, but
I don't think it'll be that stark. I've been to parts of the world where it is that stark. I mean, if you look at Mumbai, there's the Ambanis who have one of the most expensive houses in the world is practically their own building, and right next door are the slums where people are living on just a few dollars a day, if that. So it will never get to that extreme. I actually feel that as much as we decry the wealth inequality in the United States, we actually are pretty well off in comparison to most other countries in the world. But at the same time, there's a lot of people who are, driving. They can't afford to live anywhere in the Bay Area, so they end up commuting, 2 hours one way to work as like a barber in some shop in Palo Alto or something. So there is sort of that. There is a bit of a divide. The haves and have-nots, the engineers and their children who get to go to all the schools and have access even to the public schools that are more advanced. But anyway, I still think we're like, as much as we criticize it, it's a great place, and I think most people that are here are actually trying to do the right thing and trying to make the world a better place.
Yeah, totally. And I'm sorry, I didn't want to come across as, I do a lot of like cursing in the darkness on the show, as they say, lately. I want to,
Uh-huh.
I want to start lighting candles instead of doing that. And
Yeah.
just to bring it back, that's why, you guys' email struck me, because we get a lot of PR stuff, people trying to get on the show, but you guys seem like you're really, I think the term was like you wanted to geek out about blockchain, and I was like, yes, that's what I want to do. Kind of the space it's such a tricky thing to kind of stay on top of. I appreciate us being able to chat a little bit about like the physical space, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about Harmony and kind of what brought it about, and just kind of give us the little intro story.
Sure. So actually what we're just talking about is a perfect segue into Harmony. And so Harmony is first and foremost a scalable layer one blockchain. And we achieve that by doing what we call deep sharding. So a lot of people have probably heard what sharding is. There's a lot of other protocols working on it, but we take it all the other sharding approaches just a step further, in that we even consider the networking layer, sort of like the layer zero, and how to integrate that optimizations in networking. How you optimize the actual bandwidth that each node and network has to further speed up consensus, both in finality and also in throughput, and drive costs down. So we have a very sort of vertically integrated, like full stack approach, and that's why we call it deep sharding. We go deeper, and we're not afraid to go into layers of the technology that most people don't see as a room for optimization, but we see it as ripe. And the interesting thing about our team, I think, in light of what we were just talking about, is most of our team actually comes from big tech companies. Many of our engineers were senior engineers at those companies like Amazon, Apple, Google, Microsoft, and we kind of realized that blockchain was the next wave, that blockchain would actually help solve a lot of the problems that big tech is creating in the world that we were just talking about. Wealth inequality, just concentration of data and power in the hands of few people. And you can see that everywhere, besides just the fact that, the tech elite are like all billionaires and seem to rule the world, but in the fact that, in light of Cambridge Analytica and even how, social media is now starting to play a very large role in shaping even political discourse. And we think that we need blockchain as a layer of trust, as a new kind of infrastructure for the internet, because the internet is now becoming it's a public good. It really is so critical to the coordination of society at large, and we need to sort of re-architect it in a way that is more fair, not only economically, as we think that people in the future should be able to, earn money from their data, but also politically, and that people should have a little bit more ability to govern the networks that they're a part of. If you think about Facebook today, you don't really have much say over what Mark Zuckerberg decides to do with your data, or even the features he decides to build. Is also a problem for developers who want to build on top of a platform like Facebook. So in essence, we are kind of a big tech engineering team with all the expertise that comes with, but with the intention of actually creating an alternative, kind of being the anti-Google, the anti-Facebook, to come and hopefully offer a more fair, more equitable alternative.
That's really good to hear. And I know that a lot of your developers and a lot of your people come from these bigger companies that really kind of just, they have such a monopoly on people's view of the internet. Some people in the world, we've talked about this on the show before, when they think of internet, they think Facebook.
Yeah.
And that's kind of creepy, because there's so much more out there. And I've been playing around with archive.org lately. I think that's a pretty fun, like the way back functionality. and just seeing how the internet's changed, even just in my lifetime, it's amazing. And kind of thinking back about what happened in history and thinking back to this past election in America, and just it seems like we're living in accelerating times, and the consequences of what we do online are really, really starting to show up. When I hear you talk about harmony, I come from a music background, so I think of chordal tones. I think of stuff. This sounds beautiful, and it you take something, you build upon it, or you can find new ways for the notes to kind of commingle in a way that just sounds good. And I spent a lot of time studying music, trying to understand what is it that makes it sound good, asking professionals, and literally they would tell me, well, it just sounds good. So, I mean, there's really not much more to it. And I'm trying to conceptualize, what this decentralized internet would mean. I mean, would you call it a decentralized internet, what you're trying to do?
I would say, we're trying to build one of the basic pieces, one of the fundamental pieces of the infrastructure for a decentralized internet. I think that the consensus layer is fundamental to building out all the other aspects of a fully realized decentralized internet. But I wouldn't say that harmony in and of itself is the decentralized internet. It would be, not just harmony as an infrastructure layer, but also the applications that are built on top, and all these other, necessary pieces coming together. But I really want to get back to what you were saying about, harmony in music, and I think for us, that's one of the metaphors that we also inspired the name harmony. And to me, when I think about blockchain, the reason that I'm in this space, previously I was actually in the AI industry, and that's what I studied. So I was kind of on the dark side in terms of, using data to try to, build products. And I think that's, a lot of it. I think AI is a very concentrating, a force that concentrates power and wealth. I realized, when I got into blockchain, that it was sort of the yin to AI's yang. They kind of balance each other out. And, you can think of blockchain as it's a very fundamental, paradigm shift in terms of, if you think about the way that humans have organized themselves throughout the, millennia. We formed tribes previously, and, you can only trust, people in your family and people in your tribe. And then slowly, as nation states grew and there became the rule of law, the ability to trust more people kind of spread out and therefore as trust could sort of spread itself out more fully, we could have more complex, more rich societies with more trade and all kinds of added benefits, more sophistication. And I think we've kind of reached a limit, and I think we're seeing the breakdown of the current sort of realization of those structures, of our legal system, also our nation states. We're seeing the limit of even, some modern democracies. And so I think for me, blockchain becomes, again, it's not the be all end all. Just, consensus protocol itself is not going to solve the problem, but it is, again, a fundamental layer that enables, will be people call it a trust machine. And in some ways it is. It'll be one of those fundamental ingredients to creating new architectures of, social organization for human beings at large. And that's where the name harmony comes from, is, we think blockchain can be a force to harmonize human beings all around the world. And that's why, one of our original taglines was open consensus for 10 billion people. And it's the idea that, in the year 2050, when our population, reaches 10 billion, hopefully the decentralized internet, fueled by blockchain, will be able to, make those 10 billion voices into, an amazing harmony.
That's awesome, man. And I love what you said about blockchain being the yin to the AI's yang, because, man, it's already here and most of us don't realize it. I I saw in Malibu a kind of like a robotic security guard. Have you seen those things?
Oh my God. I just saw one the other day in a mall
Oh
over
man.
here, and it was so strange.
Yeah, and there was a write up about it I read because I saw that and I saw kids taking pictures with it, and honestly, I felt scared. I know that's just me, but I wanted to learn more, and then I looked into it. They're trying to develop, little self-driving ones that can detect and prevent harm to life and harm to personal property, and I'm like, wow, like who's making these calculations? Like, there's all these ethical and these decisions that traditionally we've left up to, like you said, governing bodies like nation states. And I think that, I guess what I was trying to say was that blockchain element is it's mysterious. And I like how it's open. It needs to be open source. The consensus I think it necessitates open sourcing it. Do you foresee a future that we need to be kind of vigilant to guard against, where maybe a central authority has both blockchain and AI under their control? Do you know what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're trying to ask. And I think we're going to see a trend of certain centralized governments trying to use blockchain actually as a tool for increasing their own power. I think a good example as a country like China that it seems that the People's Bank of China is pretty interested in using blockchain as a way to track money flows around the nation. And I think that's this amazing economic tool, right? All of a sudden, you'll be able to have a window into every transaction and see how money is flowing in real time, and all the analysis and the insights that you can generate from that are amazing, and probably can result in much more well-informed economic policy. But at the same time, it's a little bit scary because then all of a sudden, on the one hand, America has very strict capital controls and enforced internationally. So it's hard you can't just move money around that easily. Obviously, money laundering is a massive occupation for that exact reason, to try to get around those capital controls. But if you go to the extreme, I think that there's a good reason for that. But if you go to the extreme of China, if they do have control over some central blockchain system in which all the money flows, then the amount of power that they can exert over the individual in regards to their money will also be nearly absolute, and that's very frightening. And I think, for me, and the way that Bitcoin has kind of opened my eyes, I see, money as a human right. Self-sovereign money should be something that everyone has access to, because it's the safeguard against an autocratic government. If we don't have that, then how can you resist? And so that's why I do see governments will use it in a way that empowers them. But in the long run, these public chains, the alternatives, as they grow, I think they offer that alternative. It's a safeguard against a government that is trying to oppress you. If you can look at Venezuela as a very good example of that, where the government has had rampant inflation, and they even try to crack down on Bitcoin mining and even the trade of Bitcoin, but they can't do it. It's actually too monumental of a task to shut something down that's so decentralized and something that you can just access through the internet. The Bitcoin is offering Venezuelans an alternative. It's a way out. They can opt out of their government's crazy policies. And so I think, and this is only 10 years into the revolution. I think a few decades from now, it'll be that much more robust, that much better built out, and there'll be more access globally. So it's sort of I think Bitcoin will, not Bitcoin, but blockchain in general will exert pressure on governments to treat their citizens better. Because if they don't, the citizens now have a way out to some degree.
Yeah, it's we definitely have to get involved. I feel like things are going to get pretty weird in the future when they have to decide if a cyborg or is a person or a robot, or is a robot a sovereign person? It's just going to get, future's going to be weird. But I feel like it's not this, what we're talking about, the blockchain for everyone, it's just not a reality yet because of scalability. Would you say that's correct?
I think it's a number of different things. I mean, scalability is a huge factor, and that we, even if we did have massive adoption worldwide, then we wouldn't be able to actually support that many users. So scalability is definitely a huge part of it, but there's other pieces as well. There's also just the fact that the user experience is so terrible. It really, I couldn't even get my parents to get onto crypto. I mean, it'd be very difficult. I mean, maybe they could go onto an exchange and buy some Bitcoin, but in terms of becoming a user of other networks or even sending their own transactions, it would be very difficult for them. Let alone someone like, let's say, my grandmother, who's much older, who can barely use a smartphone. So I think the user experience really needs to come a long way, and luckily there's lots of people working very hard at this. And I think additionally, it's just that the access is pretty limited as well, and that even for me, I'm a U.S. citizen, but I'm a Hawaii resident. And there's actually legislation that was passed in Hawaii that limits Hawaii residents from being accepted onto exchanges. So it's very difficult for me even to get onto a legitimate exchange to buy cryptocurrency. So the infrastructure for on-ramping people is just not there either. So there's a lot of different pieces that are there, but we're seeing the slow trickle, and it will only, I think, continue to accelerate. But it's not just scalability, but scalability is definitely one of the precursors. Like, we need scalability before we even think about reaching mass adoption.
Right. And I'm trying to understand how this deep sharding is working. And I'm afraid to even say that, maybe something might happen in my throat. People think I'm saying something different. But we've heard about, is this kind of like braided chains? And am I correct in assuming it's blockchain agnostic and just a way for different blockchains to communicate?
Yeah. So, well, essentially, I mean, any other blockchain can also take these kinds of cues and look more deeply into the networking layer, and even the systems layer as well. I think the systems layer optimizations are a bit further out, but we look at when we look at blockchains, one of the key bottlenecks is actually the networking, right? Imagine a world where every computer in, let's say, the Bitcoin network could communicate with infinite bandwidth, instantly. Then a lot of the constraints of the network would change, and that block propagation time would be drastically reduced. And so you could actually pump out, many more blocks than Bitcoin currently does. And with each new block, that means you're minting that many more transactions. So in many ways, the block propagation is a fundamental bottleneck in any blockchain protocol. And there's a lot more sort of, I guess, detail to go into there. But one of the things that we have been optimizing significantly is actually that block propagation time. So we use, within each shard, we use a technique that we call adaptive IDA, which is an adaptive information dispersal algorithm, in which we use a special kind of erasure coding called fountain coding that allows us to essentially parallelize even though the block is coming from one leader, the leader is able to parallelize the distribution of that block among all its peers within that shard. So what that does is it leverages all the available bandwidth within the shard to get that message out. And then so the faster you get that message out, the faster you can approve that block and move on to the next one. So that increases, decreases the time to finality, the latency, and it increases the overall throughput. So that's one example of deep sharding, parallelizing the bandwidth constraints among the network participants.
Okay, that makes sense. I wanted to talk about Harmony's kind of the future, but I also wanted to give you the opportunity to, just kind of talk about what you're excited about with Harmony.
Yeah, I'm most excited about launching our mainnet late this quarter. It's going to be really exciting to finally see the fruit of all our labor go live and actually start to be used by people. I really am keen to, stop just talking about our technology and what it's capable of doing and actually have it be live and demonstrate to people what we've been building and how well it works. So that's going to be really exciting. It's also, a very daunting task. There's a lot of testing to be done. We're in the final stages of development, but as with any software project, you have to be careful because bugs are lurking, in many different places. And even if you look at the history of platforms like Bitcoin or Ethereum, and we're quite close with also the Cosmos team, there's always kinks to be worked out. But we've been slowly performing deeper and deeper testing and ironing out those kinks. So we will be ready when the time to launch comes around. And then next year and later this year and into next year, I'm looking forward to more mass adoption of blockchain. I think that not just Harmony but other chains will be coming online that will offer infrastructure that DApp developers can leverage to do a lot more interesting things than we've been doing in the past. And I hope that combined with hopefully better access, maybe even identity platforms, stable coins, that will start to make blockchain more of a reality, right? I think we're beyond now the speculative phase, or at least I hope that we're kind of maturing out of that and into a phase where blockchain delivers real value for real people. And so that's what I'm most excited for is when I don't have to, when I'm talking to my friends about what I do and how passionate I am about blockchain, they don't just think of it as some sort of scam or some sort of money grab, that they actually, their lives are impacted or they can more readily see the value that it brings.
Yeah, and not to be like snarky or anything, but I feel like pretty soon you'll be able to say, I told you so. And that'll be great. Yeah, man.
I hope so. Yeah. I mean, I feel, and this is something that Naval Ravikant says often, which is that it's much easier to predict the future in the long term than it is in the short term. And so for me, the reason I want to work in blockchain is because I see the long-term potential. I see where this is heading. And to me, it's a really exciting future. But it's also hard to tell, in the next, so that I would say that's like, 20 years out or whatever. I'm just certain that it's going to be so revolutionary. But, in the near term, 5 years, I don't know how it's going to play out. So it's really hard to know when I'll be able to, as you said, look back to my friends and say, hey, look, I told you so. But I know that day is eventually coming, but I don't know when.
Right on. Well, I think this stuff like this helps getting the word out, getting, more and more people engaged. This has been a really good conversation so far, and I wish we could, hopefully we can talk again maybe later after you guys launch. Where can people go to learn more and maybe even get involved?
Yeah, so we are very active on. We have a Telegram channel. It can be a little bit noisy. We have a Discord channel where a lot of the development happens. So I encourage people to check us out there, especially if they're more technically oriented. If you want to run a node, participate in the test network, you can find instructions there. We have our website is harmony.one. And we have a research channel where we talk more about deep sharding and our technical kinds of approaches. We also are on Twitter, so you can find us at Harmony Protocol. And I like what you said about the followers being, more. It sounds like they're more like true believers in crypto, and I think that's actually been the refreshing thing about the crypto winter is that it's filtered out the noise. And so it's great, even no matter how small the audience is, let's say we're giving a presentation, it's about the few people, even if there's just one person in the audience who is a true believer, that we can reach, then that's what really matters. Because that's the person that's going to make the difference in the long run. And we need more of those people to be involved in the space and continue, putting their attention and effort towards, bringing about this revolution.
Absolutely. Well, Nick, I really appreciate your time to explain some of these things to me in greater detail. I know that there's other people out there like me who probably learned a lot. And for those who can get involved, please, I'll put the links that Nick mentioned in the show notes. Yeah, thanks again so much for your time, Nick. This has been really fun.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ethan. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. We'll catch up with you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.